Morning.
So we are here this morning reading from the third canto, the 16th chapter, and this is verse number 12. When the chapter is entitled "The Two Doorkeepers of Vaikuntha, Jai and Vijay, Cursed by the Sages." So we'll repeat this as one person. Tan me svabarthar asya yam alakashamano.
Tan me svabartur avashayam alakshamano.
Yushmadhyati kramagugatim pratipadayasaya.
Yusmadhyati kramagugatim pratipadayasaya.
Bhuyo mamantikam itam tad anugraho me.
Bhuyo mamantikam itam tad anugraho me.
Yat kalpatam arikarito brityarto vivasya.
Yat kalpatam acharito kayator vivasya.
Tan me svabartar avaisayam alakshamano.
Tan me svabartur avashayam alakshamano.
Yusmad vitikramagatim pratipadya sadya.
Yusmadhyati kramagugatim pratipadya sadya.
Bhuyo mamantikam itam tad anugraho me.
Bhuyo mamantikam itam tad anugraho me.
Yat kalpatam akigrato bhrdyato vivasya.
Yat kalpatam acharito ritayor vivasya.
Tan me svabarthar avasayam alakshamanu.
Tan me svabartur avashayam alakshamano.
Yushmad viyati kramagatim pratipadayasaya.
Yusmadhyati kramagugatim pratipadya sadya.
Bhuyo mamantikam itam tad anugraho me.
Bhuyo mamantikam itam tad anugraho me.
Yat kalpatam achirato brityator vivasya.
Yat kalpatam acharito vivasya.
Someone else like to chant? Tan me svabarthar
avashayam alakshamano. Yusmadhyata kramagugatim pratipadya sadya. Bhuyo mamantikam itam tad anugraho me. Yat kalpatam acharito bhrdyayor vivasya. Tan me svabartur avashayam alakshamano.
Tan me svabarthar avasayam alakshamano.
Yusmadhyati kramagatim pratipadya sadya.
Yushmadhyati kramagratim pratipadya sadya.
Bhuyo mamantikam itam tad anugraho me.
Bhuyo mamantikam itam tarunugraho me.
Yat kalpatam acharito pritayor vivasya.
Yat kalpatam acharito bhrdyato vivasya. Anyone else?
तन्मे स्वभर्तुरवसायमलक्ष्यमाणौ
Tanme Swavartar Avasa
युष्माद्व्यतिक्रमगतिं प्रतिपद्य सद्यः
Yusmat
Satakrimagatim Prapitatya Sadya
यो ममान्तिकमितां तदनुग्रहो मे
Bhuyo Mamanti Kamitam Taranugraho Me
कल्पताम् अशिरतो भृतयोर्विवासः
Yadavatam Acharito Vitayor Vivasya
Anyone online?
तन्मे स्वभर्तुरवसायमलक्ष्यमानो
Tanme Swavartar Avasayamalakshamano
युष्माद्यतिक्रमगतिं प्रतिपाद्य साध्या
Yusmat Vatikramagatim Pratipadya Sadya
भूयो ममान्तिकम् इतां तदनुग्रहो मे
Bhuyo Mamanti
Kamitam Taranugraho Me
यत्कल्पताम् अचिरतो भृतयोर्विवासः
Yat Kalpatam Achirato
Vitayor Vivasya
Anyone else online?
Hare Krishna. तन्मे स्वभर्तुर अवसायम् अलक्ष्यमाणौ
Tanme Swabartu Avashaya Malakshamano
युष्मद्वयतिक्रम गतिं प्रतिपद्य सद्या
Yusman Vyatyakritam Kim Pratipadya Sadya
भूयो ममान्तिकम् इतां तद् अनुग्रहो मे
Bhuyo Mamanti Kamitam Tadanugraho Me
यत् कल्पताम् अचिरतो भृतयोर्विवासः
Yat
यत्कल्पताम्
Kalpatam
अचिरतो भृतयोर्विवासः
We'll do word for word. Tat.
Tat.
Therefore.
Therefore,
May.
my
Swabartu.
Swabartu
Of their master.
of their master,
Avasayam.
Avashayam,
The intention.
the intention,
Alakshamano.
Alakshamano,
Not knowing.
not knowing,
Yushmat.
Yusma,
Against you.
against you,
Yati krama.
Yati Krama,
Offense.
offense,
Gatim.
Gatim,
Results.
results,
Pratipadya.
Patipadya,
Reaping.
reaping,
Sadya.
Sadya,
Immediately.
immediately,
Bhuya.
Puya,
Again.
again,
Mama antikam.
Mama Antika,
Near me.
near me,
Itam.
Ita,
Obtained.
obtain,
Tat.
Tat,
That.
that,
Anugraha.
Anugraha,
A favor.
a favor,
To me. Oh, sorry. May. To me.
to me,
Yat.
Yat,
Which.
which,
Kalpatam.
Kalpatam,
Let it be arranged.
let it be arranged,
Achirata.
Achirata,
Not long.
not long,
Brityaho.
Britaya,
Brityayo. Of these two servants.
of these two servants,
Vivasha.
Vivasha,
Exile.
exile.
Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai.
Jai.
These servants of mine have transgressed against you, not knowing the mind of their master. I shall therefore deem it a favor done to me if you order that, although reaping the fruit of their transgression, they may return to my presence soon, and the time of their exile from my abode may expire before long. Purport. From this statement, we can understand how anxious the Lord is to get his servitor back into Vaikuntha. Therefore, this incident proves that those who have once entered a Vaikuntha planet can never fall down. The case of Jai and Vijay is not a fall down, it is just an accident. The Lord is always anxious to get such devotees back to the Vaikuntha planets as soon as possible. It is to be assumed that there is no possibility of a misunderstanding between the Lord and the devotees. But when there are discrepancies or disruptions between one devotee and another, one has to suffer the consequences, although that suffering is temporary. The Lord is so kind to his devotees that he took all the responsibility for the doormen's offense and requested the sages to give them facilities to return to Vaikuntha as soon as possible. Om Jnana Tamaranjasya Gyananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmalatam Yena Tasme Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Upakeda Malandara Svadvatanti Kamba Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadara Shri Advaita Gaura Bhaktivinoda So I'll read the translation again. These servants of mine have transgressed against you, not knowing the mind of their master. I shall therefore deem it a favor done to me if you order that, although reaping the fruit of their transgression, they may return to my presence soon, and the time of their exile from my abode before long, it may expire before long. So we're taking here to understand that this has been a big discussion that's been going on for a few weeks now about, the four Kumars and the gatekeepers and what's really happening here. How is it that the gatekeepers, Jai and Vijay, they're servants of Lord Vishnu, they offended the four Kumaras because the four Kumaras were Brahmanas, they're great devotees, but they were coming in still in that space before meeting Lord Vishnu. They were still slightly in an impersonal space, so they weren't completely in that devotional service. They were very much coming from the place of Gyan. They had that all of the knowledge. Where'd that knowledge come from? Their father. So they had firsthand knowledge from their father of all the glories of the Lord, and they learned all of these things. However, they still were, that was coming from the place of Gyan, they still were not directly connected in that relationship with the Lord, in that bhakti devotional relationship. So they were coming up to meet, very excitedly to meet the Lord. The sons of Lord Brahma, they're here, they're traveling around. They are, young boys. They're naked. They're coming up to the gates. So the Jai and Vijay, of course, assume that they are not, it's not proper for them to meet the Lord. And we know that Jai and Vijay's role, we've learned this over the last couple of weeks, their role was just to protect the most confidential space of the Lord. They were there as gatekeepers to keep the most confidential aspects of the Lord preserved and protected. And so they're saying that, okay, these young boys coming up here, they're not quite qualified to come in. So he rejected them. And of course, the four Kumars were like, hey, we're the sons of Lord Brahma. We are great devotees of the Lord. You've offended us by not letting us in. So this is quite a conundrum. So when Lord Vishnu gets involved, like dad comes out and trying to settle a dispute between the siblings. And sometimes it's not an easy situation. I mean, those of you who've had kids or tried to work with kids, and even adults, sometimes we might see adults that are having conflict. And you're trying to see both sides. You're trying to come at this in a fair way. You're trying to have even perspective about it and be equiposed to the situation. But it's not easy. So Lord Vishnu he's the Supreme Personality of God. He's the Lord. So he's coming in and he's like, okay, what's going on here? He's trying to assess the situation ultimately. And he's assessing the situation. The gatekeepers are now at this point have received a curse from the four Kumaras. So this is doubly bad. It's not just that four Kumaras have been rejected. They cursed him. So now that makes it another layer of complexity that the Lord has to sort out. Not only he could have just said, okay, let them in. But now we've got a curse in the mix that he's got to deal with. And when a Brahmana curses, it's for real, right? Most of the time it's not to be undone, right? It's a pretty serious thing when a Brahmana lays a curse on someone. So this is the thing that, of course, Lord Vishnu was taking this all into account, seeing his beloved servants that have served him for so long. They've done so well by him in their roles of the gatekeepers. His beloved servants are here. They made a mistake. The Lord Vishnu's like, they should have let him in, let the four Kumaras in. But they made a mistake. And the four Kumaras have now laid upon this curse. So here we are, here's in today's verse, where Lord Vishnu is saying, okay, here's how we're gonna handle this, okay? We're gonna accept the curse, okay? You know, my servants clearly, they haven't fully understood my instructions. They haven't clearly understood me and my heart, or else this would not have happened. They would have let the 4 Kumars in. They would have let, you know, these devotees in to come see me. So clearly, my servants have not clearly understood my heart. They have not understood my instructions, but that's a mistake. It was not intentional. They were not trying to do anything malicious to the 4 Kumars. It was a mistake. So, but they did make a mistake and the consequences are to be paid. So, you know, now the Lord at this point is thanking the 4 Kumars to say, okay, well, now you've already laid out the consequences. I don't have to do anything. He's like, you've already done it. You know, the karma has been laid out, you know, has worked its way out already. It was a very quick reaction. You know, this is you've cursed them. Great. Okay. He's making a request to the 4 Kumars to say, we accept the curse. Jai and Vijay will accept your curse. This is part of the consequences for their actions. However, I kindly request that you make it quick. I need my servants back. So he's surrendering, he's letting go of his beloved servants. He's acknowledging the mistake. He's also taking into account that he would have had to, because of the situation, he would have had to lay forth some sort of consequence for Jai and Vijay, even if the 4 Kumars hadn't laid down a curse, because there was an offense made. So the Lord would have had to do something, and he's recognizing that. So he's like, thank you for doing my job for me. You know, you took care of things. But I'm requesting that you make sure that they don't stay away from me for too long. And one of the things that I wanted to draw on for today's verse is there's a couple of, in thinking about this verse, there was a couple of things that came to mind for me in preparation for this. And one of them is that in chapter 12, it's talking about the qualities of the devotees that are very dear to the Lord. And here, Lord Vishnu was saying, these servants are very dear to me. They're very, very dear to me. So please let them come back swiftly. Let their term of exile be quick, because they're dear to me. And we know that the pure devotees of the Lord are very, very dear. One of them is because a pure devotee of the Lord is so rare. It's so rare. So this is a very, very special relationship that the Lord has with a pure devotee of the Lord. They're very dear to him. It's like a precious, you know, we might think a precious gem, something that you can't find, something that's very rare. People that are into collectibles, right? Those things that are the most rare are the most precious to them because they know they're not easily replaced. They're not easily replaced. You can't just go out and find this rare collectible again. You know, if it goes missing or something happens to it. And the Lord is seeing his devotees, you know, his pure devotees, not just all, but his pure devotees as seen as something like a precious jewel or precious, you know, precious thing that's so rare that they're not easily replaced. And he's very much, you know, very much attached to that relationship and in a spiritual, in a transcendental sense of attachment. So in Bhagavad Gita, in 12:20, I'll read the translation. Those who follow this imperishable path of devotional service and who completely engage themselves with faith, making me the supreme goal, are very, very dear to me. And I'm going to read a little bit of the purport that Prabhupada wrote because he says it best. He writes, in this chapter from verse 2 through the end, from my aveshya mano yemam, fixing the mind on me, through yetu dharmarthram idam, this religion of eternal engagement, the Supreme Lord has explained the processes of transcendental service for approaching him. Such processes are very dear to the Lord, and he accepts a person engaged in them. The question of who is better, one who is engaged in the path of impersonal Brahman, or who was engaged in the personal service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was raised by Arjuna, and the Lord replied to him so explicitly that there is no doubt that devotional service to the personality of Godhead is the best of all processes of spiritual realization. So let's pause here for a second. So now what we're seeing here is that although the four Kumaras were, elevated and dear to him, Jai and Vijay were personal, devoted, pure devotee, like servants. They were pure devotees of him. So they are so dear to him.
Mother Vinjavali, place it on mute, please.
It's hard to find on the phone. So I'm going to keep reading. In other words, in this chapter, it is decided that through good association, one develops attachment for pure devotional service and therefore accepts a bona fide spiritual master, and from him begins to hear and chant and observe the regulative principles of devotional service with faith, attachment, and devotion, and thus becomes engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord. This path is recommended in this chapter. Therefore, there is no doubt that devotional service is the only absolute path for self-realization, for the attainment of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this is, Prabhupada's saying it here, like this is, if we ever had any question, it's made extremely clear right here. There's no doubt. He said, the Lord replied to him so explicitly that there is no doubt that devotional service to the Supreme Lord of Godhead is the best of all processes. And so this is how, because this is the best process, there's so many other iterations out there of spiritual activity. So many iterations. We see it, right? I mean, even in bhakti, there's iterations, right? We see different expressions of bhakti. We see different expressions in the Hindu umbrella. We see different expressions of Christianity, of Islam, of Judaism. So there's just so many different expressions. But if one is not engaged in devotional service, then it's not going to take them to the abode of the Lord. That's what's made clear here. So now let's talk about the fact that what if we make a mistake? And especially if a pure devotee makes a mistake. Now we know the pure devotee is very rare, and a pure devotee is pure, right? So they're supposed to be coming close to flawless, right? Only the Lord is flawless. But a pure devotee of the Lord, if they make a mistake, what happens? Is that a fall down? And this is something that's discussed here. Prabhupada says, is it a fall down if a pure devotee makes a mistake? So Prabhupada says, no. If they're a pure devotee. So we'll get into this a little bit after I read this, but this is the kind of gray area that we might run into, because I know I'm not a pure devotee. I'm not even anywhere close, right? But so we make mistakes. How do we assess that for ourselves? But let me read this from Bhagavad Gita first. So this is chapter 9, verse 30. Even if one commits the most abominable action, if he's engaged in devotional service, he is to be considered saintly because he's properly situated in his determination. So this here is being said that, if one is engaged in devotional service, that any action, even if it's abominable, want that person to be considered saintly. So how do we interpret this? This is an interesting verse. So Prabhupada's purport says the word sudurachara used in this verse is very significant, and we should understand it properly. When a living entity is conditioned, he has two kinds of activities. One is conditional and the other is constitutional. As for protecting the body or abiding by the rules of society and state, certainly there are different activities even for the devotees in connection with the conditional life, and such activities are called conditional. Besides these, the living entity who is fully conscious of a spiritual nature and is engaged in Krishna consciousness or the devotional service to the Lord has activities which are called transcendental. Such activities are performed in his constitutional position, and they are technically called devotional service. Now, in the conditioned state, sometimes devotional service and the conditional service in relation to the body will parallel one another. But then again, sometimes these activities become opposed to one another. As far as possible, a devotee is very cautious so that he does not do anything that could disrupt his wholesome condition. He knows the perfection in his activities depends on his progressive realization of Krishna consciousness. Sometimes, however, it may be seen that a person in Krishna consciousness commits some acts which may be taken as most abominable socially or politically, but such a temporary fall down does not disqualify him. In the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is stated that if a person falls down but is wholeheartedly engaged in the transcendental service of the Supreme Lord, the Lord, being situated within his heart, purifies him and excuses him from that abomination. The material contamination is so strong that even a yogi fully engaged in the service of the Lord sometimes becomes ensnared. But Krishna consciousness is so strong that such an occasional fall down is at once rectified. Therefore, the process of devotional service is always a success. No one should deride a devotee for some accidental fall down from the ideal path, for as explained in the next verse, such occasional fall downs will be stopped in due course as soon as a devotee is completely situated in Krishna consciousness. So this purport is really rich, but I want to pause here for a minute. So completely situated in Krishna consciousness. That's important. That's an important qualifier. So, and Prabhupada says here that sometimes the conditional and the transcendental are running like this, right? And sometimes they cross. So in our service, we are looking, so when a fall down happens, he's saying that there's nothing lost, right? There is no loss or diminution. We've learned that in Bhagavad Gita. We learned that early on. There's no loss or diminution. And there's also Arjuna asked, what happens to the fallen yogi? What happens to the fallen transcendentalist? This is in chapter 6. What happens to the fallen transcendentalist? And Krishna replies, well, there's no loss. A fallen yogi that falls from the path will come into a Brahminical family, a wealthy family. They'll have a good next life. So it's the thing that's beautiful about the way this is all laid out is that there really, ideally, is no question about how things work. It's about our interpretation of the language that I think is critical, because I think this is where Prabhupada really helps us understand the different gradients of devotional service. And because we know through the nectar of devotion, we know that pure devotional service is extremely rare, right? We know that. So then we take that going back from that. So if this is extremely rare, then it becomes more and more common to have like mixed devotional service, to be, on the material plane and having spiritual inclinations. And then we kind of work from there. And this is where we have the 9 processes, or the 9 stages of devotional service. We start with Shraddha, faith, and then we slowly work up Anartha Nivritti, and then we get some Ruchi and Nishta, and then we're kind of working our way up, right? So there's the top, of course, as we know, the Prema, the Bhava is at the top. But look at all those things that come in between, and sometimes we might feel ourselves or see other people bounce, It's like, I have some Nishta, oops, I have some Ruchi, noops. We maybe some taste, some steadiness, and then all of a sudden we're still like back. We're like, oh wait, I have some of these anarthas still that are kind of holding me back, pulling me back down into a more material platform. And so this is the kind of the play, the dance of our devotional activity. But we know that the more that we see the Lord as our ultimate goal, right? This is the prayojana of Abhidaya. This is the ultimate goal, is the Lord. If we take that seriously, and we take that process seriously, then Krishna will see that sincerity. And if he sees that there is a fall down, it says right here, he'll take care of it. He'll take care of that fall down for us. And he'll, he gives what we need in order to be able to learn from that and move forward. So Krishna's, he's in our hearts as Chaitya Guru. He's their super soul, right? So he knows everything that's going on. There's no hiding from him. So he takes that and he knows how to respond to each one of us individually. So I want to There is a verse here in the Srimha Purana, and I'll just read the translation. It says, the meaning is that even if one fully engaged in the devotional service of the Lord is sometimes found engaged in abominable activities, these activities should be considered like the spots that resemble the mark of a rabbit on the moon. Such spots do not become an impediment to the diffusion of moonlight. Similarly, the accidental fall down of a devotee from the path of saintly character does not make him abominable. On the other hand, one should not misunderstand that a devotee in transcendental devotional service can act in all kinds of abominable ways. So we can't use it as a license to just go out doing stuff, right, in the name of God. This verse only refers to an accident due to the stronger power of material connections. Devotional service is more or less a declaration of war against the illusory energy. As long as one is not strong enough to fight the illusory energy, there may be accidental fall downs. But when one is strong enough, he is no longer subjected to such fall downs as previously explained. No one should take advantage of this verse and commit nonsense and think he is still a devotee. If he does not improve in his character by devotional service, then it should be understood that he is not a high devotee. So I think Prabhupada, sometimes we see it sometimes in all faiths. We might see using scripture in the name of some activity, and doing something in the name of God. But sometimes they are very abominable actions that we might see happening in the world in the name of God. And so how are we to understand that when here it says an abominable action, if it's engaged, will be excused, right? So it's these kinds of things, and Prabhupada, should be feeling very thankful that we have a very sober, an Uttama Adhikari, a very sober person that is can be able to present this to us in his purports to give us that clear understanding. So speaking of Uttama Adhikari, so it kind of brought me to my final point for today. I wanted to talk about some of the qualities of the Uttama Adhikari. And there's a nice article. It's the 10 points of the Uttama Adhikari, and these are different quotes from Prabhupada and from Shastra. Uttama Adhikari is the highest devotee, very advanced. The association and service of such a Maha Bhagavat or perfect Vaishnava is most desirable. 2, Uttama Adhikari is one out of many Vaishnavas, highly advanced. His association should always be sought. 3, the stages of Uttama Adhikaris is very rarely attained, not to be imitated. 4, if the Kanishta Adhikari thinks that, quote, I have become Uttama Adhikari, then he's a rascal. He's a rascal. 5, should be careful to accept an Uttama Adhikari as a spiritual master, meaning that we should look to find an Uttama Adhikari as a spiritual master. 6, no possibility that a first-class Uttama devotee will fall down. 7, accidental fall downs occur only at the lower stage, weaker stage. 8, fall downs occur from disobeying the Uttama Adhikari spiritual master. 9, must be self-realized by imitation. Must be self-realized. By imitation, one will eventually become degraded. 10, a symptom of unauthorized lower stage neophytes posing as Uttama Adhikari spiritual masters. So that's a symptom of the unauthorized, is them posing as that. So this one here, this one, fall downs occur from disobeying the spiritual master. It takes us right back to where we are today. From our verse, it's not that they disobeyed Lord Vishnu, but Lord Vishnu says right here in today's purport that they did not, they made a transgression. They did not fully understand. It says in one of the other verses in this chapter that his servants didn't fully understand his instructions and understand the true essence and meaning of his instructions. So this is, in a sense, disobeying, right? So then the Lord Vishnu is the spiritual master. But again, because they are the highest, the Jai and Vijay will receive the mercy from Lord Vishnu, and Lord Vishnu will ultimately sort it out. So lastly, I just wanted to, the last few minutes today, reflect on, how do we sort this out in our own personal lives? We've talked a lot about the fall downs. We've talked a lot about the situation with Jai and Vijay and the 4 Kumaras. We've talked about what, the pure devotee is, the Uttama Adhikari. And so I like to just kind of provide a little takeaway for our own daily lives on what that looks like in our own path, in our own spiritual path. As we are going out into the world, we might be making mistakes. How do we take that? If there's consequences to our mistakes, how do we take that? If we knowingly make a mistake, we know we do something wrong and we do it anyway, or we make a very innocent mistake with a situation, not knowing the parameters, let's say, of a situation, and we might overstep or say something that's not proper and not realizing that that was an offense or a mistake. So all of these things being said, the thing that we can all have an opportunity to do is when we make mistakes, be able to go within and say, okay, first of all, Krishna knows everything that's going on here because he's in my heart. So I can try and, sugarcoat this. I can try and, twist this a little bit to make myself feel better. But at the end of the day, the Lord knows really, really what's going on. Both sides. The Lord knows our sincerity in the situation. The Lord knows our dedication, our level of dedication to him. And so he will be a part of that delivering of the consequences. And so it's important that we understand when those consequences come to us, that sometimes they might come in ways we might not necessarily know. The Lord isn't always, like our parents, when we were kids, maybe we got a punishment, the parents would lay it out and say, you did this, now I'm going to punish you because of XYZ action. And XYZ action was wrong. At least hopefully a good parent does this. XYZ action was wrong because of this. And these are the consequences. And so it's important to recognize that, we get that maybe in life. Someone might say, your boss may have told you, oh, you did something wrong, or I don't like how you handled this situation. You might get feedback from that. Maybe there are consequences that, for a few weeks are looking over your shoulder constantly, right? But when we have in spiritual life, if we make a mistake, maybe there are consequences because it's with another person. Maybe it's something more subtle. We don't always know how those consequences are laid out for us. So I think for me personally, I think it's a good assumption. Anytime something happens to me, I'm like, okay, we're going to take this one and, take it on the chin. Something probably I did somewhere along the line, somewhere invited this situation. Be reflective of it. That's my own personal method. That doesn't have to apply to anyone else, but it's a process. It's a process of understanding. So Jai and Vijay, they knew right away because Lord Vishnu was there telling them. And so, but they're going to be exiled for a very long time. And so this was a very heavy consequence for them, a very heavy punishment for such pure devotees. And so here we are in the material energies, just trying to navigate, because we're in the middle planet, in the solar, in the material energies, trying to navigate all of these things. So the other thing that I wanted to point out here, and this is, we talked about the parenting aspect of it, but Lord Vishnu, he really sets the example of leadership, right? Why? He sets the example of leadership because he is looking at the situation and he's accepting it. He's accepting the curse because he's understanding the intricacies. Sometimes things have very delicate nuances. And Lord Vishnu he's looking at this from, the leader is the supreme, right? And he's looking at this whole situation. He's really setting the example on a leadership platform too, of how we should go about dealing with conflict. So not only are we seeing the lesson here of receiving the consequences and understanding what happens if there's a fall down, but we can look in the flip side too and see from a leadership standpoint, how's God handling conflict among devotees? How does God handle that? Well, he gave us an example right here.
Hmm.
He gave us a perfect example. He allowed his servants to take the consequence. He lovingly acknowledged his servants and saying, I don't want them to be gone for long. You know, he was compassionate, he was fair, and he heard both sides and he saw both sides. And he took that very difficult conflict. You know, this is like spiritual conflict here. I mean, this isn't like, oh, you made me mad, I'm not going to talk to you. This is like you're exiled from Vaikuntha. That's pretty serious, you know, and he had to navigate the situation. And so he did so as God would, right? He was very equitable. He was very equiposed in a situation. He wasn't like, absolutely not. These are my servants. You cannot take them from me. I am God. He could have. He could have wiped the whole thing clean. He could have been like, I'm God. I'm Lord Vishnu. How dare you curse my servants? How dare you take them away from me? Absolutely not. He had all faculties to do that. But he didn't. He didn't. He set an example. He set an example for all of us to see how one can handle a situation from a place of being equiposed, even if we ourselves are feeling the pain from it. Lord Vishnu was feeling directly the pain from this situation, but he still was equiposed in it and did what was right. So I'm going to end here. It's 1:15. So any reflections, questions, corrections, comments?
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you. In the I forget the words exactly used in the purport. I found it very helpful to understand because Srila Prabhupada, I believe he said okay, there it is. The case of Jai and Vijay is not a fall down. It is just an accident. You know, so like an error in judgment, and some of those situations, and they felt they were doing the right thing, right? You know, my job is to protect the gates and not let somebody who's unfit to enter in, and they used their judgment. They erred in judgment. So like I think that's helpful because the way I understand a fall down is when we turn away from Krishna. They weren't turning away from Krishna. It was just an error in judgment.
Yeah.
You know, and they, you know, obviously there's still some consequences to making a mistake, but the fall down of forgetting or wanting to forget about Krishna, wanting to forget one's relationship with Krishna, and having to enter into the material world as a result of wanting to be separate from Krishna.
Mm-hmm.
You can see that their category is different.
Yeah.
You know, they never wanted to forget about Krishna.
That's an excellent point. Yes, thank you. That's absolutely true. So because they were pure devotees. And a pure devotee is always in service of the Lord, no matter what. And because of that role of a pure devotee, their heart is always engaged in that loving devotional service. This was a misunderstanding, you know, and this is where the situation, like I said, it was very delicate, you know, because Lord Vishnu had to come out and actually navigate this. So we can take that to understand for ourselves too, that a fall down is real. Yeah. Like you said, turning our backs to go to the Lord and going back out into material energies. And that's a very serious thing. So thank you.
And just understanding like the script of the whole Leela that's taking place.
Bigger picture.
As to, you know, there had to be the situation.
Yeah. The Hiranyakashipu.
With Hiranyakashipu and Hiranyakashipu. It's it all kind of like, you can see this like beautifully scripted play being composed by
the Lord.
In order to, you know, enact these pastimes and how it's, you know, coming together. And it's really beautiful.
It's beautiful. And I've mentioned this before in class, but we have to remember that the personalities in the Bhagavatam are so elevated. They're all part of the Lord's in confidential associates, in the sense that there's so much of this acting, enactment of things for the pastimes. So understanding that the consequences for Jai and Vijay were actually, part of his plan to bring, great demon Hiranyakashipu to, be able to be defeated by Prahlad Maharaj, so it's all of these things that are, pastimes, really, that all of his the Lord's most confidential associates are playing out these roles in different ways. But they are also, it's kind of like when you think about in the Christian sense, there's parables, so these are all these great pastimes, and they're enacting these things for the pleasure of the Lord, but it's also for the education and understanding of people, like us. They serve in a parable sense too, to be able to provide lessons as well. So we get both. We get the understanding of the pastimes and how these are all enacted for the pleasure of the Lord. And there's also teaching. These are setting examples and teaching opportunities and learning about the deeper activities, the more intimate actions of a pure devotee, to understand the dealings of the Lord and to get a glimpse into the Lord's, more confidential aspects through Bhagavatam. So we get just it's tip of the hair, understanding of what is all that is the Lord. So, and it's beautiful. It's absolutely, that's why I love Bhagavatam. It's just these beautiful, this interplay. Like I said, it's all for the Lord's pleasure, all of it. So thank you. Any other questions or anything online?
Hare Krishna, Mother Vrindavaneswari. Thank you very much. Very, very nice class. And again, like you were saying, all of these verses are very thought-provoking, really make you look within. But one of the things that I was thinking today was how important it is to get guidance, because there is the danger of using this to justify our positions, and both sides can justify their position. And so we need somebody, and we do have Prabhupada's guidance. We have his purports, but I think we are, again, twice removed from Prabhupada. So we need somebody who has the wisdom to help us see where we are or how we should be using these purports, this guidance. At least for me, that's how I see it. It's not pretty mandabuddhi here, and we need guidance from somebody higher, somebody older, somebody wiser, somebody more experienced in whatever area we're talking about. So that was what I was thinking, reflecting on as you were reading Prabhupada's purport, and thank you.
No, thank you. It's absolutely, I couldn't agree more, right? I think that's why we have the parampara. It's why we have the guru system. So it's really critical that if we are serious, if we are truly serious about our spiritual path, then we take a guru. Because if we're serious about our spiritual path, a guru can provide the guidance, the understanding of Shastra and Prabhupada, and understanding and being able to see our activities and help us reflect more deeply on our own spiritual path and ways that we can improve in our spiritual path. So the guidance and the direction are critical. And it like I said, it's from someone that is truly serious about their spiritual life. It's just the same way if we're serious about getting a degree, some people just read a bunch of books. But, most people go to school and they, seek out professors and get advice. So they become expert in their fields, and if we're looking to become advanced in devotional service, then we need guides along the way that can help us and nurture that for us. So thank you. That's an excellent point. Anything else? Any other comments or questions? Anything online?
Sorry about my keeping my phone on.
Oh, that's okay.
See, that is the mistake like Jay Vijay did it. You excuse me.
You're always
I
excused.
never do that. But I don't know that message on and I want trying to mute it. I couldn't do it. Oh God. Excuse old lady, okay?
No worries, Vidyavali. No
Like Vishnu did excused, you know. Devotees.
no worries at all. No worries.
Sorry about it.
Okay. Did you have a question or comment?
Yes, I was reading the translation. So it says, the servants of mine have transgressed against you, not knowing the mind of their master, not knowing the mind of their master. So I would like to understand that. Or like what exactly Lord Narayana is saying there, like what is his mind in this situation, like not knowing.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the Lord's mind either, but I think what we can interpret from this would be that Lord Vishnu has said that he would have, it seems to us that he would have allowed them in. So if he would have allowed the four Kumars to come in and greet him, they are the sons of Lord Brahma, if he would have allowed them to come in. But Jai and Vijay were taking direct instruction not to let anybody in that wasn't, in that pure devotional service. So they didn't understand his mind. They didn't fully understand his instructions. So because they would have, if they had understood that the four Kumars would have been welcome, then they would have let him in. So, and that's where they're saying that, I'm gonna make sure I'm in the right chapter. Yeah, that he says that, not knowing them, I show therefore deem them in favor. Yeah, so they transgressed against you. So he would not have, the Lord would not have if he were standing there. We can assume and say that the Lord would have said, okay, come, please come. But Jai and Vijay did not understand what their master was wanting and intending in that moment. So we can't always understand the mind of our guru. We can't always understand the mind of others, but we can take their instruction and we can interpret it to the best of our ability. And if we are sincere, then we can interpret and say, okay, this is what I understand. However, we should always ask questions. So, there could have been an opportunity for Jai and Vijay to say, hey, we've got the four Kumars out here. Should I let them in? That could have worked. We could have certainly allowed that, that could have been an option. And, so maybe that would be an understanding too, that Lord Vishnu would have been like, okay, yeah, sure. Hey, let him in, but they did not, in this situation, the Lord is saying, no, they didn't understand my mind, meaning that I gave them instructions, but they took them in a certain way. They did not fully understand my instructions in the way that I was intending them. So it's not a fall down. It was a misunderstanding. They weren't being malicious in that. So, I think that that's what I'm understanding from it, and what I've heard others talk about it, but I don't know if you have more insight into that, I'd love to hear your insight.
So I was reading the further purpose. So the Lord clearly says, the Brahman, the cows, and the defenseless creatures are my own body. So as you said, so they should have known that these are the Lord doesn't discriminate anything. Like he's very much affectionated to these, especially these kind of people, of the living entities. So Vijay and Jai Vijay should have known this. That's what I think, the mind of the Lord. That's what I believe.
Yeah. So
that's what he says. He meant there.
Yeah. So he should have known. They should have known. But they didn't, because they took the instructions, because there's this whole gray area that we've kind of dipped in and out of throughout the last few weeks, this whole gray area of the fact that the four Kumars were young boys, they were naked, they were actually a little bit more on the impersonalist side, even though they were Brahmins, they were more Jnanis. So there's that kind of gray area that I think, were they 100%? But Lord Vishnu says that he didn't understand them correctly. So Lord Vishnu is the ultimate decider in everything. He says that they didn't understand his mind, then they didn't understand his mind, and they misunderstood the instructions. But Lord or Jai and Vijay were thinking, okay, only pure devotees are allowed to enter, then that's what happens. And so they're not understanding the deeper instruction of that. Well, all Brahmins, all elevated pure Brahmins should be able to come in. So this is where this whole pastime, I think, it's a little muddy. And it's meant to be, I think. I think it's meant to be a little, because I've been hearing different speakers talk about this, talking about, well, were they right? Were they wrong? It's kind of gray area. And, talking about even Mother Archana Bhakti the other day was saying about, well, only Vaishnavas are really, Brahmins. And, and she was kind of giving her class about the Vaishnavas, and so there's so many different, like I said, the gradients on it, to be able to understand why they made the mistake. It's a gray area. It's a very muddy situation, and you got a curse in the mix, so that just further muddies the waters. And Lord Vishnu is the only one that really can come out and just be the deciding factor. And he did, allow the curse to go on. So Lord Vishnu is the one that ultimately says, no, they misunderstood me. And that was through them thinking that only these pure devotees could enter. And he saw the four Kumars and misunderstood their position too. So, yeah, it's tricky. I think it's meant to be that way.
Yeah, there's the saying Prabhupada uses it, that the mother teaches the daughter-in-law the daughter.
Yeah.
Because the daughter-in-law, she may not be able to understand or take the direct criticism.
Yeah.
To the daughter, you say, okay, they cook, okay, there's too much salt, or not enough salt, or you didn't put enough spice, or the flour is not, too tough. And the daughter-in-law, hearing that through the kind of the chastisement of the daughter, she knows, okay, I better not do that. But so utilizing somebody that you're very close to, you can use them as an example, because their heart is basically one. So they're acting as a surrogate of you. And therefore you can teach in that way.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely. I love that example. That really applies to this. It's Lord Vishnu using Jai and Vijay as that example. And like I said, he could have taken the other path of saying, like, these are my, confidential gatekeeper associates. How dare you do this? No, they didn't make any mistake. They were fine. But he did set that lesson forth and let the Kumaras see that as well. Because the four Kumaras felt really bad. They're like, oh no, what have we done? Oh, we shouldn't have cursed them. We shouldn't have tried to get it. They saw their transgression then when Vishnu came out, and they started to, like, okay, wait a minute, actually, maybe we didn't. So that's a really good example, Prabhu. Any other thoughts or feedback?
Do Jai Vijay know? Does Jai Vijay knows that these are Brahma Manas Putras? These four Kumaras? They don't know that, no?
Well, I mean, they should, I would think, but I don't know if they'd exactly directly make that connection. I don't know. Does anyone know?
Not initially.
Yeah, they don't realize initially who they are.
Yeah. Or they would have put them in.
Yeah.
That's it.
So any
Nice
other
class.
thoughts?
Thank you very much.
Thank you, everyone. Hare Krishna. Panchakalpa Trivishya. Kripasindu Vaivita. Hitana Bhavnebhyo Vaishnavebhyo.
Vibhyo Namo Namo.
Hare Krishna. Have a good day, everyone. Hare Bol.
Thank you. Happy holidays.